Amigos de TNT Sports México, qué gusto saludarlos. Aquí Rodrigo Lara desde Londres, desde los estudios de la Premier League, el Hollywood del fútbol inglés. Y hoy tenemos un invitado muy, pero muy especial. Se trata de una leyenda de la Premier League, Frank Lampard. Frank, thank you so much for your time. How are you, first of all?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for your time. Nice to see you.
Excellent. To start this interview, I would like to ask you, when do you start playing football? How do you fell in love having your dad as a role model in your house, right?
Yeah. So I fell in love with football for as long as I can remember. You know, since I started to walk, I had pictures at home. My father played for West Ham for 20 years around. I grew up a West Ham fan, lived very close to the stadium. So it was my whole life growing up was football and my education. So my dad pushed the football and my mother pushed the education. So I had quite a strong situation. But I loved it. My dream was always to play in the Premier League, to play for my country. But I also, from having a father as an ex-player, I also knew the hard work and the difficulties to try and make it as a professional. It's not easy, as any player will tell you. The amount of practice, hard work, all the things you have to do through those years to get there. So I feel very fortunate that I had that strong upbringing. I managed to make it into the Premier League and obviously had a long career.
And then I want to take you a few years later when you was playing for West Ham United, and Harry Redknapp say in a press conference or in an event you have with the club, I didn't want to say this in front of him, but he will go right to the top. Right to the top. What memories do you have from that moment, and how do you feel with only 18 years old?
Yeah, well, I feel very thankful to Harry for that support. Who was my uncle. Harry is my uncle. So he supported me on and off the pitch at that time. And the reason he had to say that in that interview was because some people were criticising me or the idea that I was in the team because of Harry being my uncle and he was the manager of West Ham. So Harry was defending me to an extent, and I think he was, I'm not sure he definitely thought that I would go right to the very top, but he was defending me and giving me support when needed. And that helped me because at that point I was trying to get into the West Ham first team, which was my dream. But it was difficult and it's tough. There are not many superstars like a Wayne Rooney that they explode at 17 and they're just in the England team. For me, it was a process of working. So that early parts of West Ham were trying to fight to get into the team, and Harry was a great support and a great reason for me becoming a professional player.
And then you joined Chelsea a few years later, and then you become one of the greatest players for the London team. What's the best memories you have playing for Chelsea?
Well, from the moment I joined Chelsea, I think I was in 2001. I was a young man, and it felt like a really big move because Chelsea were a bigger club, bigger expectations, and I walked into a dressing room with Gianfranco Zola, Marcel Desailly, like lots of big names. So I was quite nervous, but I did have a great relation with the Chelsea fans straight away. I think they took to me, and I loved being at the club. And the huge difference probably in terms of the history of my time there was Roman Abramovich coming into the club, which changed everything. It changed the playing squad. We started to recruit better, stronger players. We became a force. Now we're fighting for the Premier League. Jose Mourinho came the year after that, and my personal relationship with Jose meant that he helped me, probably more than anything, have a mentality and a mindset to go another level and improve even more. And I have big thanks to that. So my memories really are really of a togetherness of playing and being lucky enough to play under fantastic managers, but more so with fantastic teammates and a really strong squad. We had this spine, if you like, through the team of Petr Cech, of John Terry, of Ashley Cole, myself, Didier Drogba, and others that stayed there for a long time. Lots of friendships. We won quite a lot. We lost sometimes, so but really, really good memories.
Amazing. And now you are a coach. Mm-hmm. What managers influence in you to take this role now?
Well, all of them. I played under many managers. Jose Mourinho, I just spoke about. He was the first manager to really probably affect my brain in terms of have confidence. I was probably a little bit too humble, but within myself a tiny bit, to believe that I could compete on the highest level. Jose changed that. So I think I try and take that from him in terms of how he made me feel off the pitch. I try and influence young players, particularly now I work with a lot in management, to influence them in the same way, give them confidence, give them a feeling of support. But I also worked under Carlo Ancelotti, who we all know now is incredibly successful, and he had this particular way about him in terms of how he was with you in a one-on-one relationship, and I loved that. So that made me feel good. But many managers, I tried to take small details from all of them, things I remember, things I made notes of at the time, but also try and be myself, because I can't be Jose. Jose's very unique in his way. I can't be Carlo. There'll be different things about that, but you can try and take certain skills that they had that you appreciated and use them in my jobs now.
And I was listening the other day an interview with you where you say that being a manager is more intense than being a football player. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, being a player is, I say it's easier, but you have your sole responsibility is yourself to try and perform, to stay in your best fitness condition and help the team. Being a manager means you have this responsibility which is much wider than that. So you have to look after all the squad, try and keep them all at a good level, all the staff behind the scenes, interact with the media, be the reference for the whole club in a way, as the head of it. So for the first part, it's more difficult because it's much more consuming in your life and your time. You have to be there the first, you have to be the last to leave. Even when you're at home with your wife, you're still thinking, what's tomorrow, what's the game Saturday, what meetings tomorrow, what training sessions, all these many things as a player you don't have to consider. So I think that's why it's harder, but the other side of that is I think when you win and you have success, the feeling is even better because of those responsibilities. If you feel that you've led the team to a win, for me it's even better.
I want to ask you, talking about managers, Pep Guardiola, do you think is the greatest manager of all times?
Well, he's certainly there and thereabouts. I think when we look at the Premier League, you can't come away from what Sir Alex Ferguson did over a long period of time with Manchester United, building a team, building another team and keep winning and winning and winning. So I think you have to respect that in terms of that conversation. But I think Pep Guardiola, what he's done in terms of with Manchester City, he's a leader, and when I say a leader, as in not just a leader of Manchester City, he was the first to change style, change the game, see things differently, and now we see many managers trying to sort of like follow that in their own way. So Pep's always like one step, it feels, ahead. So I think between him and Sir Alex Ferguson, you're looking at the two best managers the Premier League's seen.
And what do you think of this current Chelsea very young team at the moment?
They are young, it's a fact, and I think with a young team, it's not always easy to have great consistency. Maybe to win things, it's not always easy, but it's a strategy that Chelsea have taken. I think at the moment, and the start of the season they've had now, that it feels like they're going in the right direction. Lots of young talent, especially in forward areas. Lots of options to change in game or change and stay fresh. So I think they're, after 2 or 3 years of being in a transition and a difficult time of change of ownership, changes of managers, changes of players, and the squad, there's a lot of new faces and players. It's understandable that they haven't competed, but I do feel now they're in a good position to challenge the top 4 again, to be where Chelsea expect to be.
And talking about the Premier League in this season, do you see any other candidate maybe to win the Premier League apart from Manchester City?
Well, I think what Arsenal have done in the last years, firstly they've brought in lots of players now. You look at their squad, is really strong in all areas. Even behind the first player, they can take one out, bring one in, and they have a lot of options there. And I think they've taken City close for the last 2 seasons, been close. So you have to say Arsenal are in the conversation to compete with City. And I think Liverpool, again, may be more difficult for them because of the change of manager and because Jurgen Klopp was so distinct, his style to change might be difficult, but I still think they have a really good squad, and I think the new manager has started well. So those are the ones that I would see that we'd expect to compete again. But the beauty of the Premier League is now you have teams like Aston Villa, you have teams like Brighton and Newcastle who are all, improving. Their squads are stronger than ever, good coaches. So there's surprises always in the Premier League. Aston Villa, I think, have been a great example of that in what they've done in the last 2 or 3 seasons.
And then you also have the chance to play for your country, to play for England. What a big honor. What's the best memories, the best times you have wearing the England shirt?
Well, I have a sense of pride for England because, I grew up, was absolutely my dream, and to play 100 plus times is like, that itself is, for me, is And sometimes those feelings you understand even more when you finish playing. You know, you're proud of what you've done in that sense. And every time you play for your country is a huge honour. It was for me and my family. That I never lost that feeling in all those times. Going to play in tournaments, I played in World Cups, 3 World Cups, Euros with England, and they're always amazing moments. Unfortunately, we could never win as we wanted to. Everybody wants to win, and we couldn't get to that stage. But looking back, every time I played for England was a fantastic moment.
I grew up watching this England team with so many great players, Wayne Rooney, John Terry, but there was one particular player that the media talked about. You maybe had a rivalry with Steven Gerrard. Talk to me a little bit. Do you really have a rivalry with him, or it was your teammate in the national team, or how do you compete with him in the Premier League as well?
Yeah, our only rivalry was on the pitch when we played for Liverpool and Chelsea. We always had a good relationship, and I think that even grew as we got older, and even now, you know, how we are, because you have a mutual respect for each other. I always thought he was an incredible player. We played Liverpool so much when I was at Chelsea. We played them in the league, we played them in the Champions League and Cup finals. It seemed like we played them all the time. And whenever you played him, you knew it was going to be a big battle because of what he could do. So that was a rivalry, but it never on the pitch together. We always got on well. The media in England were obsessed with the question of myself and him. So I've been asked it many, many times.
Two great players.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we both, you know, wanted to win with England. In a simple term, I think how we played for our clubs, you know, really suited us. We were very confident for our club, maybe the systems of how we played. And with England, finding the right system to make us feel as comfortable for our country as we did our club, we never quite got to. And some of that you take personal responsibility for. Some you look back and go, I wish we could have maybe felt different. You know, I remember in major tournaments, the way we set up, it was hard to control games how we wanted to, and there were many, many other parts to it, but the media were fixed on myself and Stephen.
And ahead of the next World Cup in Mexico, USA and Canada, what do you think of this World Cup with 3 countries, and what do you think of this England team ahead of the tournament?
I'm excited for the World Cup. I think it's brilliant to be going. I played in America for two years, nearly at the end of my career, and lived in New York, so I have a big understanding of America. Travelled around a lot to play there, obviously. And the idea of it being in 3 countries with Mexico and Canada, I think it's a great thing. I think it's the evolution of the World Cup. It's moving into different territories and seeing it across 3 countries is brilliant. I would love to have played in a tournament like that. So I'm excited for that. Just the different cultures and the feeling. I think it's going to be the biggest World Cup. With England, I think we have a really, really good young squad. We didn't perform as well as we could in the Euros. I think that's something that everyone recognises, even though we got to the final, and I think that shows now that the squad is stronger. They could get to the final even without performing at our best. But we have really strong players, specifically at the top end of the pitch, and wingers and number 10s and strikers. I think we have some fantastic players who will get better. So hopefully by the time the World Cup comes, we'll be in a good position, and I think England can compete with the best.
Are you a Messi or Ronaldo fan, and what do you think of both?
I don't like this conversation. I played against both. More Cristiano when he was at Manchester United. For some reason against Real Madrid, we didn't play against him that much. Messi I played against a lot in some big games between Chelsea and Barcelona. Messi, for me, individually for talent, is the greatest ever, probably in my opinion. But with Cristiano, what he did in terms of what he made himself, and the numbers and output and goals and dedication and hunger, and even now to this day, means that they're just there together. I have to respect them both in the same way. I don't think it's a fair to try and put one above each other. I think they've been the most amazing players, and I'm honoured that I could play against them, be on the pitch with players at that level.
Fantastic. And the best player you ever played with?
I get asked this. I always say 2 because they were so important for Chelsea, and that was John Terry as captain of the club and as a player. He was an incredible player, and Didier Drogba, because Didier won us finals in big games. Didier would always arrive in finals and in big games against big opponents. So those 2 for me, huge influences. And
your best friend in football?
Many. I played for a long time. So at Chelsea, I played with John and Didier. I just mentioned we're still very good friends, but we have a group on our phones. when you play for that long, you know that you can always rely on your teammates, and that was on the pitch, but that's carried on afterwards. So I've worked alongside Petr Cech working at Chelsea. I've worked with Ashley Cole in coaching now as well. So we're all very close still and good friends. But I have many friends from a long career.
You have one favorite goal from the so many you scored in your career?
Yeah, I guess the goal I scored two in 2005. Chelsea won the league for the first time in 50 years. First time we as a group together won the league against Bolton. I scored 2 goals in 2005. And they were the ones that really give me that emotion when I look back and see them. They were not my best technical goals, but they were best goals for feeling because they meant we won the league that day. So I would say those.
We have your shirt here, but
that was the shirt I wore for those goals.
I believe you have many shirts in your house when you swap shirts after the games. Do you have any particular favorite shirt?
Ronaldinho.
Wow. I saw your picture in the Instagram, right?
Yes. So I just spoke about Messi and Cristiano, and I played against amazing players. Iniesta was one. I've got his shirt too. But Ronaldinho was the first player that I played against that I was like, wow, this is a different level of football. It's speed, skill, personality, how he was. And I remember swapping my shirt with him, and I just had so much time for him. He was the World Player of the Year, and I came second that year. It was one of my best years. And I came second, and I was like, you deserve to win it. It was just an amazing player with a big smile on his face all the time. So his shirt is well looked after. In
that picture also is Rafa Márquez in the back, defender from Mexico who won the Champions League with Barcelona. What do you remember from him? And it was tough as a defender, or what memories do you have from Rafa Márquez?
He was very tough, but also with quality to play as a centre back. All I remember, what I remember from him, is that some players exude like a character, like a strength in the way they play. They have a strength in terms of their own confidence and how they play. And I always thought that with him, that he had this incredible strength, character, no problem, strong and tough, but also with the way that Barcelona play with this great technical and sort of tactical qualities that they had through the team. He was a player that could do that side of it and also do the tough side of it. So very impressive player, and I remember we had lots of battles with that team.
Perfect. Super, Frank.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you so much. I hope you enjoy this time.
Thanks for your time.